Thank you for your attention. I'm going to talk today about living a life of faith as an archduke, an ambassador, a husband, a father, and simply being a faithful Catholic. Apart from archduke, all of you can do the same. So I hope I will pass a few of my experiences. I'm rather old already from life. I want you to do the same things that I aspire to do. It's an honor, and I want to thank every one of you here that you took the time on a Saturday to come in and listen to me speaking. Archduke. Archduke is a title that only exists in the Habsburg family and nowhere else. We didn't invent it. We found a very interesting document that many people said was a fake in the 15th century. That proved that I think Emperor Nero gave the ancestors of the Habsburgs some sort of privilege. It's called the Privilegium Maius. But don't dare to say it's a fake. And that gave us our family title, Archdukes. It sounds somehow better than Duke, but as it exists only in our family, it's a bit difficult to say what it really is. Being a Habsburg is something that you put on like a second skin from childhood on. The first time you realize that you're something different is when you're in school and it's a history class. And as from around 1273 to 1918, nearly every major year of the European history has something to do with Habsburgs. You always have the situation where the teacher says, but this is something that Mr. Habsburg should be able to tell you. And you blush and you have no idea, of course. So you begin to read about your family, to learn about your family. And the first thing you find out is they were really Catholic. They were Catholic over 800 years where they were rulers in Europe. This begins with our first Habsburg king, Emperor Rudolf, who came on the throne in 1273. And before he became Habsburg ruler, he was a count in Switzerland. And the first story that everybody knows about him is that he was out hunting with his horses, and a priest carried the Blessed Sacrament and wanted to bring it, the viatic, to someone dying. And the river was swollen, there was no bridge, and he gave him his horse, and he led him across on the horse, across the water. And when the priest afterwards came back, wanted to give him back the horse, he said, "Far be it from me to sit on a horse that has carried my Redeemer." Wow. So that was 1250s. And the last Habsburg, of course, if you see historical context, probably most unimportant, 1.5 years in the middle of a war, and at the end of his reign, the empire was gone. This man, very ironically, became the first saint of our family. He's blessed at this point, but he'll be a saint. Blessed Emperor Karl, whom I strongly recommend to everyone in this room to become friends with. It's really worthwhile. So you realize it's a Catholic family. It was a Catholic family through and through. Not all members of the family were as Catholic as those two big ones, but most of them were. And so when you grow up as a Habsburg, you carry that name, you have a lot of strong examples to study. You say, what's my identity? No, most of us want to find out, who am I? What am I supposed to be? What is the thing God expects of me? What should I be in this life? For a Habsburg, it's easier. You have a set of values that sort of are your package. It's in your genes, and also people expect it of you. They expect you to be a devout Catholic. They expect you to take responsibility in society and world. They expect you to be a part of peaceful coexistence between countries, because that's what the Habsburgs did over centuries. Thank God I'm from a family that didn't have bloody tyrants, horrible family wars, and things like that. We were a family that, as the Latin saying goes, Bella gerant alii, tu felix Austria nube. Others may lead wars. You, happy Austria, marry. So the Habsburgs did politics by marrying off their daughters and sons. and by building networks of Catholic friendship. Yes, the greatest example, of course, is Blessed Karl, and he embodies all those things that I just told you at the beginning. Is the title of my talk, which is Living Faith as an Archduke, not as an ambassador, but as an emperor. I say he lived his job full of Christian faith, and his job happened to be emperor. Husband, he led a very, 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 very happy marriage. Father, they had 8 children, and he was a wonderful father to his children, and a faithful Catholic, an example in everything he did. Okay, let's go to ambassador. Ambassador is a pretty cool job. I had incredible prejudice before I was asked that I wanted to be an ambassador to Hungary, to the Holy See for Hungary. I thought ambassadors are people who always have a glass in their hand, stand at receptions, smile limpidly, and are not allowed to say anything in order not to cause a diplomatic crisis. That is not the truth. But I didn't know that when I was asked. So my first reaction was, never in your life. I'm not your typical diplomat. Matt didn't mention that I was also a screenwriter for TV and film, and I've written a treatment for a zombie movie. So I am not really your typical diplomatic type. But they asked me, and then I went to Rome, and what I found out is that it was the perfect place. It was the best step I could ever make in my life, because you can really do these things. If you are of a gentle temper, if you can accept other opinions, if you are ready to engage in talks, you can change a lot. It's not mostly me going to the Vatican and talking about problems between our countries, which is the smallest part. It is mostly building up networks of people of goodwill. That is a very, very strong thing to do. Now, I'm of the opinion that whatever job you later will choose, somebody may be ambassador or diplomat, you should be a recognizable Christian in your job. Whether you are working with a rugby team here and later go professional, whether you have a family and decide to stay at home, whether you're ambassador or working in the cleaning industry, you should be a recognizable Christian. Mostly by acting as a Christian, but also by speaking about your faith. You may be the only opportunity for somebody in your surrounding to ever meet a Christian that believes in God. And as we are here under friends, a Catholic. You should always be ready to give testimony of your hope, of our hope. Blessed Karl did that in his job. It is very well known. It was known to all his soldier colleagues when he was heir to the throne and in the trenches during the First World War, that he would always have a rosary in his pocket, that he would always have the image of Sacred Heart on his nightstand. Also, when he traveled in a train, he always had that there. He always had blessed water with him. He was ready to speak about his faith. He always intervened when soldiers were too coarse, when they cursed, when they led immoral lives. He would speak to them. So that is Blessed Karl for you. In my work, it's easy to speak about faith because I'm ambassador to the Vatican, to the Holy See. So not only can I speak about what the Vatican is doing and about all faith-related topics all the time, but a part of my work is going to Holy Mass, which is extraordinary. But I go to Mass not only on Sundays, and not only privately with my family sometimes during the week, but I go to Mass as work, because if an embassy celebrates their national holiday, they will either make a reception or make a conference with people from their country talking about the topic, or, mostly have a Holy Mass in their language, in their chapel in Rome, and you go there regularly. So for me, this is fantastic. Because I'm a Catholic, I enjoy going to Mass, but I imagine, some of my colleagues are Muslims, some of them are atheists or agnostics, and I always tell them, it's very courageous of you to come. You'll spend a lot of time on your knees here in Rome. That's part of my job. So that's very nice because it's a job that reminds you of your faith regularly. Please do that too later on in your job, wherever you are. Try to bring faith into it and live it like a Christian. Archduke Ambassador, husband. I'm blessed to have been married for nearly 27 years now. I have a wonderful wife. I can tell you that the saying that you're never as much as in love as on the day of your wedding is absolute bullshit. Sorry for saying it. I love my wife and she loves me far more than we had any idea we could at the day of our wedding. So being married is something wonderful. I know that many marriages spring from Christendom, and I also know that vocations spring from Christendom. This is wonderful. I have a brother who is a priest with the Legionaries of Christ. My wife has a brother who is a priest with the Opus Dei. We have one further Habsburg priest, so our family is also giving priests, but many of us get married and have many children, and that's wonderful. Mother Teresa, I met her once in Rome. I was in a room far smaller than this one with her praying, and she told us, a thing that she said very often, but it was great to hear it from her own mouth, family that prays together stays together. And that's my suggestion I would give to the ones of you who will get married. First of all, before you get married, find a spouse that burns for the Lord. That is very important. Now, society, media mostly wants to explain to us that, first of all, you don't marry at all. Second of all, you choose the most attractive and most, and then you have a relationship, and then let's see, and all that. This is all absolute. I don't want to repeat the word. Find a spouse that burns for the Lord. You need really someone for whom faith is the most important thing in the world. That is the first thing that counts, not how good looking is important too, but that mostly. You see, love is something wonderful. Man and woman are totally different. Each one carries their own biography, their own wounds, their own problems, their own ideas into marriage, and then you live together for many decades, and you have to confront beautiful moments, very difficult moments, childbirths, the weeks after childbirth, when nobody sleeps for weeks, when your nerves get thin, all of this together. If you have faith in common, you have the strongest thing in the world. It will carry you through everything. But one thing that you have to train from the beginning, and that's what we did, is you have to find a way to pray together. You have to find a way to pray. It doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be much, but you have to find a way to pray together. Because if you have a real crisis, one of the spouses drags the other one in front of an icon, put on a candle, you say a prayer together, even if both don't want, if both are slightly irritated at the other person, happens, you pray together. It makes the whole change, because that means that you take God not only during your wedding as a third partner in your relationship, but you take him, you build him a home within your home, a real home. Because if you don't do that, God is discreet. He will stay with the luggage in the basement and not disturb. You have to ask him in. And that's the best way, is if you begin to pray together. Yes, and go to Mass together and live the sacraments. And I can tell you from 27 years of marriage, the teaching of the Church on marriage and on sexuality is prophetic and could heal our society if it would be lived more often. And it's your duty to carry that out and to tell people about it. Oh yes, and marry somebody who wants to have lots of children. It makes all the difference. I'll talk about that in my next point. Okay, good. Father. Becoming a father is something incredible. Same goes for mother, of course, but I can only speak about father. I'm blessed with 6 wonderful children. A numerous family makes all the difference for several reasons. First of all, if I die tomorrow, my airplane goes down, or my wife and me die together in a car accident, our 6 children will have each other. They have the strongest network that catches you when you fall that exists in the world. A family that is close together. And growing up with, many of you probably come from families with many siblings. Many of you, some of you I heard, come from homeschooling. Homeschooling is an extra thing because you spend even the school time often together around the table, which is wonderful. Friends for life. around the dinner table or the lunch table, you learn all the democratic values that you need for society. If you have to first give to the younger sibling, because you're hungry too, but the younger sibling is weaker. So at our table, it was always first we serve the smallest and then after the big ones. This is something to learn every day, respect for the weaker. Then if everybody talks very loudly and the younger sibling wants to say something, doesn't get through, then she begins to cry, she runs out, and she comes back in, and she gets saying, and the sisters and brothers learn, okay, we have to be a bit careful, we have to leave our younger siblings talk. This is respecting minorities, respecting people who don't have a loud voice. All of this happens around the table, automatically, naturally. That's why I think the state should strongly support families financially. In Hungary, we do this. We encourage people to have lots of children. That's another topic I could talk about for an hour, because we're doing a lot here. 50 to 60% of marriages in the US are ending in divorce, as I learned today. Us Christians should do this differently and make a project of hope. Children grow up fatherless. We're in a generation with no fathers. And many people grow up and are lost out there. Many men mostly, but also girls. And research tells us that the importance of a father for his daughters is absolutely the strongest. I think the strongest influence during the childhood is not the mother, is the father. Because with a father, you shape your idea of God. With a father, you shape your idea of what do I want as a future spouse. If your father respects you and loves you, you don't have to search that respect and love by throwing yourself at some guy at school or later on. Fathers must be present at home and must teach their children as strongly as the mother does in a marriage. And then, of course, you have to speak about faith, not only... Because one thing is important. Children don't listen to what you say. They look what you do. They're very clever. You can't fool them. So if you speak about faith a lot, but don't pray personally, if they never catch you sitting in a corner praying the rosary alone, if they never see you going to Mass more than just on Sunday, but on another day, they will say, I remember one moment was the first time that I had to do real evangelization with one of my children. I was sitting in Mass. It was the consecration moment, and my daughter Rosa, 5 at the time, turned over to me and said, I don't really believe there's a God. And I said, okay, why? And she said, well, I can't see him. I said, okay, cool, Aristotelian, you became and I said, that's an important point, but it's like the air. You can't see the air, but you breathe it, and it keeps you alive. So you don't have to see something in order for it to be real. And she said, oh. And we had another talk of that kind a few weeks later, again during Mass, and then we began a dialogue. So sometimes as a father, you simply also have to talk about it. But yeah, the good thing is faith, like love and like family, goes through the skin. You soak it up without even realizing what you're doing. So yeah. And I think that's more or less it. I want to have some time for a little Q&A, where I hope I get some interesting questions that throw me off course. Yes, it's really the time of laity. It's the time of us lay people that we live in. We have next to no vocations, very few. Thank God the ones that feel vocations are usually on the Orthodox Catholic side. And that is wonderful, so we can have a hope that in 1 or 2 generations the church hierarchy will have recovered from the chaos of the last 60 years. But we have few vocations for priests, and I don't have to lie if I say that we have a rather weak hierarchy that not always speaks Catholic truths as clearly as they could, perhaps. I tell you that one person like you, one couple can totally change the world. If you go out there and live the faith and have faith and nurture it and work on it every day, you can change the world. And you shouldn't hide your light, as Christ said, but you have to put it onto a mountain. So many people never encounter a Catholic. Never encounter a Catholic that has a rosary in his pocket. I won't pull out mine, but I have one. But it's something I try to do on Twitter. if anybody here is on Twitter, and if anybody follows me on Twitter, you will see that it's a lot of Vatican, amusing things about monster movies, family. I tried never to show the faces of my children, but I write about the situations. Hungary, of course, and faith. Faith is everywhere. It always glides through somewhere. You have to do it in a good way, not in a preachy way, in a heart-to-heart way. But I do it all the time, and I do it very consciently because, and I get feedbacks. I'm not the only one. I know other people who say that they have hundreds of people who have begun a path towards God because of their Twitter or Facebook or YouTube account. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that this is possible just by being a Catholic on social media? Of course, if you're not an angry, fiery Catholic biting people's heads off, then this happens. Spend a lot of time on your knees. Spend a lot of time on your knees. Man is never greater than when he's on his knees. He, she, I don't use those pronouns. Give God a fixed time in your home, in your day, and in your couple later on. You have to plant a flag in a corner of your living room. Somewhere must be a place where you meet God. Somewhere God must have a little flag flying. And from there, he will begin to work into your daily life. You have to do that. Go to Mass, not only on Sundays. And not only the quickest Mass, but go for the real deal. Blessed Karl, I don't have to tell you, lived all of these things all his life. All his life. So to conclude, yes, you are no archdukes and archduchesses, but you can have a Habsburg as a very close friend. Blessed Karl is always there for the taking. Read about him, pray novenas to him, and I think he's a very strong, very powerful saint. And pray for his canonization. We're all working on that. Ask him to bless your work, your studies, your marriage, your parenthood. It's always good to have a Habsburg friend. Thank you very much. So, who's going to be the first? Oh, please.
Thank you so much for coming and for your talk. It was very beautiful. So I imagine as an ambassador, there's a lot of travel involved and a lot of time with your family. So I was wondering what you do practically to keep up that consistent prayer life at home with your wife and kids.
Well, I'm lucky right now because my current job doesn't involve traveling. I spend 85% of my time in Rome, and I'm lucky to be in the same building as the embassy. So I go up for lunch, I go up for dinner, and my children sometimes, while I'm in important talk on the phone, come in with a sad face, and then I have to resolve an issue. But this is, of course, an incredibly privileged position. Before that, I had a time where I had to travel to work. You talk to your spouse and you figure out how to do, and you have to cut on things that are less important. Family is more important. My father always used to say that the education of a child is finished with 3 years. That's a very strong sentence, but the first years are crucial. The first months and years are crucial, and that's why I think the worst thing you can do is for both parents to work as fast as possible again after a birth. It's a nightmare. You should really time spent on your children is never lost. It's a gift. So yeah, I'm privileged, really. Yes, please.
Thank you for coming. My question is, when you were working in screenwriting, how did you live your faith so that others could see in that industry?
Well, I didn't only work in screenwriting. I also worked in TV. I hosted a series with an actress together, where we visited castles and explained them to people over 2 years. And well, it's very easy. As I told you, you will at times not be reachable. That is when you pray. They will know. You will, even if it's Sunday and you are working hard on a series, say, I have to go to Mass. Nobody else in the team will ever do that. You will, when you visit a church, know more about it. They will see you kneel down. you of course should do that and not be ashamed to kneel down in front of people. And if you say the Angelus at 12, I mean, you have to. My grandfather used to say, if you're in a restaurant, should you make the sign of the cross? Because there's a danger of becoming a bit too zealous, or does Pope Francis always say, when you're not evangelizing, but I don't find the word. My grandfather always said, am I allowed to make the sign of the cross in a restaurant? He said, yes, but not if you look around afterwards to see who saw it. So it's about discretion. But I wouldn't think about it too much, because if you're a Christian and your faith accompanies to your workplace, then people will notice, and sometimes you will find out that one of your colleagues is thinking about an abortion, and then you will have to see, do I risk my good standing with everybody by saying something, or do I just pray, you know? But we do this, and society will change, and people will notice. Most people nowadays will never get to know the faith through their parish. Never. Never. Either they don't go to a parish, or if they go, perhaps they hear more about being nice and the current thing about climate change, but often not so strongly the faith. The way to become a Catholic today, if you don't have that, is very often through a personal encounter. And as most other people say, it's most important that you're nice and you help and don't talk about your faith. And talk about your faith. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah. Yes. Please.
Thank you for your talk. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about Hungary, because I've just heard that it's becoming like the light in Europe, essentially. And just, could you talk about like some instances and some decisions that have been taking place in the recent years that you've either been a part of or seen, and just how we can help bring those decisions into the States?
Mm-hmm. Okay, do we have 1 or 2 hours left? Okay, of course, don't get me started on Hungary. In Italian you say sono pagato per quello, that's what I'm paid for, but it's also my passion. In fact, Hungary is really a country that, for the time being, is a shining beacon in Europe. The European Union people in Brussels very often say it's difficult to work with Hungary because they don't represent the European values. And with European values, they mean LGBT and gender stuff. And our Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, whom I accompanied to visit the Pope a week ago for the first time in 8 years, he said in a speech that afternoon, if the founders of the European Union would come back today, where would they find the values of the European Union? In Brussels or in Central Europe? And that's the point. Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, Czech Republic, but also our neighbors towards the Balkan, Croatia, all these places still are countries with strong Christian presence, with Christian values in society, with natural law, with a strong feeling for nation, for sovereignty. And all these things are present in Hungary nowadays. We have a conservative government that has now, in 4 consecutive elections, won with 2/3 majority. For this time, the election was 2 weeks ago. Everybody expected it to be less than 2/3, but still majority, and it was not only 2/3, but more than the last time. So this is what Hungary is, and Hungary, the politicians in Hungary who know what they're doing, and are not just naive, nice, middle-of-the-road conservatives, but they go for it. They changed the constitution after the first re-election. Orban changed the constitution and put in first line, Isten áld meg a magyar, God bless Hungary. That was the first line of the constitution. We begin with God. God is the first word in our constitution. I mean, in the States it's something more normal. In Europe, unthinkable. And then they put in second paragraph, marriage is a free union between one man and one woman. Oh, you'd think it's uncontroversial 6 years ago, and now look where we are. So yeah, I would just pick out 2 things. One of them is our very strong family politics. It's simply taking money in the hand. There's 2 things. You take money in the hand and give a young family money for all their needs. You help them along. That is incredible, because if you decide to have children, say in Italy, then the state tells you, fine, you want to have kids, it's okay. You want to have a car, it's okay. You want to collect bonsai trees, it's your hobby. It's your hobby. The state doesn't say, wow, you want to have lots of kids and help build a better society. We'll help you. Their point is, fine, suit yourself. And that's horrible. The Italians have 1.5 kids, more or less, as an average. And that's it, because you simply can't afford it. Although I think you usually can afford it, even if the state doesn't help, but that's another thing. So, we help families. I give you 2-3 quick examples. There is a loan you get, it's €30,000, it's about $35,000. You pay back, it's for beginning of your marriage. When there's a child on the way, as soon as you expect a child, you can ask for that loan. You pay back 2/3 of the loan after the birth of the child, 1/3 after the second child, not at all after the third child. And that's like that. Then, if you have 3 children, you basically pay no more income tax. If you have 4 children, you don't pay any taxes at all anymore. If your parents want to help with your children, they get a subsidy from the state. If you want to buy a big family van with more than 7 seats, the state pays half of the cost. And there is financial aid for building houses. See, all these things will tell a young family, you're not alone, we got your back. And then Hungarian politicians appear in media, in videos, on billboards with a family. When you want to have children, especially as a woman in Western Europe, you are under an incredible peer pressure. First of all, you're expected to marry. You're expected to have the child when you're more or less 29. And before that, you have to work, because the only way to prove that you're a decent human being is if you work. And if somebody even thinks about getting married with 22 or 23 and staying at home, unthinkable. The pressure is so strong on you. My wife told me that. She said there was such a pressure that you don't do that. And of course, Hungary will not only help mothers to stay at home, but also those who go working. So you cannot accuse us to wanting to recreate an image from the past. But it's possible. You have the choice. And every country should do that. Because, as I described to you before, the family is the place where you form solid, solidarical citizens that will help others in society and build a better society. It's like that. It's like that. The other thing I want to mention is our help for persecuted Christians. Viktor Orban, who is not a Catholic but a Calvinist, and his top minister were at the International Catholic Legislators Network meeting, which is a worldwide organization of Catholic politicians that meet once a year, get a retreat, and talk about how you can bring Catholic topics into politics. And he went there. He's of course not Catholic. He's the only non-Catholic member of the Catholic Legislators meeting. And they paraded there as guests all the patriarchs from the Middle East, all those from Syria and from Lebanon, and all the Catholic patriarchs. And they told about the plight of the Christians in the entire Middle East. And Orban on the spot decided we have to do something. A small country, 9 million people, small country in Central Europe, and he built an office inside the Prime Minister's office that will look after persecuted Christians. And again, as I told you, with the family, took money in hand. There was a budget, several $100 million went to that over the last years, and he began to travel, sent his people traveling through Lebanon, Pakistan, Nigeria, everywhere where Christians are under pressure, and asked the communities on spot, what do you need? Do you need a new roof for your church? Do you need a school in your village? Which other religious communities need help? Tell us. And Hungary began doing that, derided by Europe. Everybody laughed. It's ridiculous, because if it would have been help for LGBT minorities in those countries, we would have been praised all over. But Christians, come on, Christians. No. And the fact is that out of 100 people who die every year for their faith, 90 are Christians. So somebody can do something for the Christians. So we have this since about 5 years, 6 years. And the Vatican is very appreciative. We help with the Vatican project too. So this is something Hungary does. And then, stubbornly digging in our heels, hands in the pockets, resist the wind of change that goes through Europe and tries to turn everything into a woke utopia. And I'm trying to be a part of that. I mean, I'm very strongly working for our family values, public relation-wise, for persecuted Christians. Our Minister for Family, Katalin Novak, beautiful woman, married, children, is now the new president of our country. And will travel the entire world and talk about what we do, which is great. Because her predecessor looked like Charles Bronson, was very, very grim, and didn't talk much. But she is young, charming, she can talk several languages, and she speaks about family, values, Christian faith. So we're in for a few good years coming. Any Habsburg-related questions? Any historians here? Let me ask you something. Let's see how many Habsburg rulers we get together. Who can tell me rulers from the House of Habsburg? Names. Please, just call them out. What? Franz Josef, very well. You know also when he lived, more or less?
1840. Well, he reigned from 1848 to 1960.
I know I'm in Christendom. I'm not anywhere. Okay. Anyone else? Other Habsburgs? Yes, Blessed Karl. I talked about him. Anybody else? Well, you should have learned one name today. The first Habsburg. Yes, very well. We got 3. Afterwards, I tell you a joke. Okay. Okay. This is another talk from about 1 hour, but I'm not going to have it. One name. Yes. Marie Antoinette, very good. She wasn't a Habsburg ruler, but she was a Habsburg. You're absolutely right. And if you could get the name of her mother, that is one of the most important Habsburgs in history. Sounded, yes?
Maria Theresa.
Very well. Bravo. Okay, very good. She had 16 children. And her tagline was, I would have fought in battle against Frederick of Prussia if I wouldn't have been in bed all the time and having children. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to end with a grim joke about the situation of school religion in Austria, because it reminded me of me trying to coax Habsburg emperors out of you. So a new religion teacher comes to the school, and the director brings him to the classroom, and before he enters, he says, "Just let me warn you. These children have no clue about Catholic faith." And the teacher says, "Why? How would you know that?" "Well, I just went in for 10 minutes and quizzed them a bit, tried to find out what they know, and they didn't know too much. So I asked them, 'Can you tell me the name of the 4 evangelists?'" Anybody? Nobody reacted. So I tried again. "Well, come on, the 4 evangelists, you must be able to say at least 1 or 2 names." And then he says, and then little Fritz in the last row lifts his hand and says, "David and Goliath." And the new religion teacher says, "Well, thank God, at least 2 he knew." Yeah. Just to tell you how grim the situation sometimes is in Europe. Okay, thank you.